let's try and understand what a free market really is. So in the simplest sense, free market is an idea that the economy works best when the government interferes as little as possible. So a completely free market in an ideal form would be where buyers and sellers are transacting freely based on a mutual agreement on price, and there's absolutely no government intervention in the form of, say, taxes or subsidies or any kind of regulation. But we've seen that an ideal free market hardly has never existed in a way, because there has always been some form of government intervention, sometimes or the other. So now, when I talk about the invisible hand is a metaphor which was used by Adam Smith to describe how a self-regulating marketplace works. So it's a phenomenon that guides the free markets and capitalism through competition for scarce resources. It's just a short video to explain free market.
What is a free market?
When I hear the phrase free market, I think of, and it's very simple, I think of a voluntary exchange between two individuals who were drawn together voluntarily as well, and who both benefit from the exchange. Could be goods, services, ideas. And it's basically voluntary social action, social interaction between human beings. It's as simple as that. I don't know if I can describe it any other way. I mean, there's obviously complexities that go into that. Once you expand this realm of individuals interacting, it gets complex, but it's as simple as social, voluntary interaction.
I think that it's the best system that we as humans have been able to come up with to bring about prosperity and to make life better for the largest number of people.
When I get to the free market, I think about a system of commerce based on that libertarian ethic for respect for individual rights. One of those basic individual rights is the right to be able to freely associate, freely trade with whoever you so desire. So a free market would be that system of commerce which is based on that principle and supported by a compatible system of laws based on respect for individual rights, including property and the right to commerce.
These are all the factors that characterize a free market. You're free to enter into any line of business you want, produce whatever you want, compete with the existing industry, and make profits. So, Shiva will sign this.
Now let's see how the US prison system has been using free market to accumulate wealth for prisons. Here, the pension system is prison for people who are convicted for serious crimes in US, and mass economics is mass imprisonment of people who have committed crimes. The graph here shows the rise of violent crimes in the US during 1960s, 1990s. But after 1990s, there's a sudden steep in the reduction in violent crimes. But even in after reduction of violent crimes, there's still increase in the number of population in people put into prisons. Here, this graph shows the comparison of different countries. comparison of different countries, the number of people in prisons. These two graphs Guru bar shows the number of people in US prisons. This is in 1980s and this is currently 2011. So this steep increase, this increase in the number of people prison population. So the increase in prison population has led to privatization of prison in US. As government was not able to handle huge population in prisons, the prison was privatized, and this led to the number of companies which started using prison as a source of income to raise, to generate wealth, and this led to a prison industry. This picture shows how this.
Story of a dangerous business. Of the billions of dollars that flow into the American prison industry and the companies that profit from it.
Billions of dollars a year are spent to lock people up.
No nation on the planet holds more of its people behind bars. 2.3 million prisoners, as many as China and Russia combined.
We're on prison bench. We're addicted to incarceration in this country.
$74 billion a year spent on corrections. More than 750,000 employees. That's more than the auto industry. Small towns trying to get in on the boom.
We were trying to get the Guantanamo detainees here at one point.
Hey, man, we're dead.
There are architects, healthcare, and technology companies, all after their piece of the billions behind bars.
It's a country that is addicted to prison. This company.
This cycle shows that the government started, as there was increase in crimes in the US, the government started passing more punitive laws to control crime in the US. But the courts made sure that these criminals got sentences like for a very long duration so that they can't come out of the prison for a longer time, like 20-30 years. This, as the number of population increased, prison population increased, this led to the many number of prisons, and which led to like privatization of prisons in the US. And these prisons started using the mass prison population to lend people to for different companies like Walmart or McDonald's or other companies, and to generate revenue through these companies. And out of the revenue generated from these companies, the privatized prison companies started lobbying the government to regularize more, to pass more laws and regulations in civil issues like crimes and related issues, so that they can again get more criminals into the jail to generate more and more revenue to the cycle. And the role played by the government. So we can see that more than 50% of the graph shows here that the type of offences committed by these criminals are like very low violent offences, which are like cannot be like put into prison for more than months. But we can see here that the rise in the prison population from at this point to this point, even though the offences are like more than 50% are low violence offences, still led to like mass population in the prisons. The government made sure that they made regulations in such a way that most of the prisons business are detained in the prison for a longer duration so that they can generate more and more money. And this is how the flow of money started. So the government started passing more stricter regulations for crimes, and this led to the population, and the population in turn made these privatized prison companies to generate more and more money to using this prison population for labor, and the privatized companies again generated lobbying the government officials to again pass more strict rules. These are examples of few of the government officials and actors who have been like arrested for lobbying in the prison industries. So this is the prison industry. The huge increase in the prison population led to like privatization of these prisons, which different companies started using the huge corporation to let out people for different companies like Walmart or McDonald's or any other companies to generate revenue through them. And they started sending these people for working for more than 20 hours per day, and they got very less time to sleep, or they didn't provide any basic facilities like food, shelter to them, and made sure that they stayed in isolation when they slept, and made sure they had work for most of the day. And after letting these business to these companies, so we can see that how the CEOs of these publicly traded companies, publicly traded prisons, paid to their CEOs. This is one of the companies where the income, the revenue generated out of this industry, and out of the revenue generated. So you can see how there is sudden increase in lobbying to the US officials to make sure that these rules are passed again and again to make sure these prison companies get revenue continuously.
So Shiva just gave you a very comprehensive review of how prisons, which as an institution are supposed to maintain law and order in the country, are actually turning into a for-profit enterprise. So our topic was free markets, and we talked about the paradox prevalent here. So free markets is supposed to be the bastion of capitalism and the laissez-faire spirit. So capitalism, when it originated, was supposed to be a free and fair system which promoted the idea of merit and talent. The only role for the state defined in such a system is the maintenance of law and order. It's basically enforcing contracts, making sure that contracts are enforced, having codes of law, making sure that they function properly. Yet, we prove through further analysis that through this very duty of regulation, the state tilts the balance in favor of a particular role. So what we are essentially trying to prove here is that capitalism as a system is not doing what it intended to do originally. Capitalism is still a very feudal system at heart. So let's talk about the Chicago Board of Trade, or let's talk about financial exchanges in general. So the Chicago Board of Trade has a monopoly on commodity trading and derivatives trading in the US. Mostly, I think some 80 to 90% of their financial derivative contracts are traded through the CBOT. Now, come to think of it, a free market is supposed to be free. Anyone, I mean, if I want, I should be able as an American citizen to establish an exchange where people can trade commodity derivatives. But by giving the monopoly power to the Chicago Board of Trade, the government is going against one of the very basic tenets of capitalism. I mean, the system which was in existence before this, the system of bucket shops, where basically I as an individual service a very small group of community, was much more capitalist than this. Restrictions regarding people who can trade on the exchange, who are the brokers on the exchange, who are the market makers, the enormous amounts of money you need to become these people, all of this solidifies this bias. Going further on to this myth, we'll talk more about derivative contracts. These contracts are extremely complex products which mostly retail investors do not understand and end up burning their hands in. What the ultimate objective of a financial product should be to impact the real economy. But what these basically do is they benefit HNIs, they benefit hedge funds. Basically, they benefit institutional investors, people who are already in a privileged position in the system. Option trading in essential commodities, in fact, has been one of the very big reasons for high persistent inflation in the Indian economy. I take you through a couple of graphs for this. We look at how the volume of trading for essential commodities has exploded in the recent past. From 314, it has grown, I think, almost 2,000% to 6,685. These are the various other commodity groups, and we can see how, as the Indian financial markets have liberalized over the years, both the volume and the amount of trading have increased exponentially. For essential commodities, for products like grain, bajra, wheat, maize, we see how closely the prices on these exchanges track the spot prices, the spot prices are the ones you actually observe in the mandi. So, in fact, one of the very first proposals the Modi Committee on Inflation came out with in 2011 was to ban trading in these, future trading in these commodities. That this is a So, I mean, this is turned into a political issue. What is happening is that the state, through its institutions and through its power of maintaining law and order, is again trying to benefit an incumbent group at the expense of the larger country.
So now we move on to a contemporary management issue. So when I said that free market allows for free entry or exit into a line of business, it means anybody can become an entrepreneur, anybody can produce what they want and compete with the existing competitors in the industry. So in this sense, even monopolies can emerge in a free market, and if they're existing over a long period of time, it's either because they're very efficient or they've innovated. So free market allows them that innovation which helps them exist. Now, what do we understand by innovation? Innovation is basically when you're creating a new and different idea which will be useful for the society, for example. And in today's world, innovation has become very important for each of the organizations to survive in the among competition. Now, innovation again has two steps. Creating ideas is one thing, but the implementation is a more important part. And it's been seen that a lot of workers at different levels in the organization play a part in implementing the idea. But what has been seen is that once the idea has become successful, it's either the brand or the company or those at the top that get the recognition. Say for example, when we talk about iPads or iPods, we think about Apple or Steve Jobs. We normally don't go into who was behind the implementation, the other workers, the engineers, etc. Who was behind it, we normally don't talk about. So in a way, those at the top, their exchange value or brand value in a way increases as compared to those, the workers at other levels of the organization. And as a result, the salary gap, since their exchange value is more, the gap between the CEOs and the other officers at the top and the other workers at the other levels of the organization, it keeps increasing. So you can see, for example, in America, the ratio of CEO compensation to the average worker compensation has been increasing over the years. And so in essence, what I'm trying to say is that free market, which was supposed to create a balanced pay for everyone, ends up favoring one particular class of individuals more. So,
moving on to the forms, this content part. So we see that capitalism in its form was meant to be a very equal system, which was not benefiting any entrenched class. But we clearly see that this is not the case. Capitalism has turned out to be a system which benefits the bourgeois industrialists at the expense of the proletariat peasants. So I mean, this picture actually summarizes very nicely the capitalist system. We still observe that there are some people at the top. These are the moneyed class who basically control the core of capitalism and appropriate all the surplus. We have an army, we have the police, which basically we have the state basically whose official duty is only to maintain law and order, but they clearly exceed that. And again, we have the peasants at the bottom who ultimately the people at the bottom are a metaphor for the working class. So the evolution of capitalism. So I mean, I think the first idea for capitalism came about in 1776 when Adam Smith published his book, The Wealth of Nations. It was supposed to guard society against the excesses of the feudal laws which we had been observing over the past 500-600 years, which basically led to the Dark Ages. So capitalism was supposed to follow the Age of Enlightenment and be a very free and fair system. But we have seen over the past 200 or 300 years that the bourgeoisie have again institutionalized the exploitation of the working class to their own benefits. Now we'll give you some specific examples of how this process has been institutionalized in a historical context. So before the British Empire came into being in India, what most of the small Indian farmers used to do was they they obviously practice sustenance farming, but they mostly had some grain left over every monsoon, which they used to store and they use again, maybe used to save it for a rainy day basically. But the British came and they implemented the policy of laissez-faire, free market basically, and under a free market this was termed as hoarding, so they banned this. So basically peasants had to sell all their surplus now to maybe merchants and grain exporters in the big towns, which basically led to things like the Great Indian Famine of 1896-97, where I think 5 to 6 million people of the total Indian population of around 80 million at that time perished. In percentage terms, this is almost equal to the loss suffered by Europe and the world in the First World War. Again, even in the colonization of America, when South America was first colonized by the Spanish in I think the early 16th century, the British wanted to do the same for North America. So initially they tried to subjugate the locals there. When that did not work, they tried to send people from Europe, the working class to the US and tried to promise them a very free and fair system where they said we'll give you land, we'll give you food and water, we'll give you food there. But ultimately, when America was finally in the verge of being completely colonized, the state again used its powers and institutions to subjugate the locals through things like the Boston Tea Party, through things like the Tea Party Act of 1773, where they basically started taxing tea, and through various other state mechanisms. And we see this debate is very prevalent throughout history. I mean, in the 1980s, when India wanted to move from a socialist to a capitalist setup for the first time, the policies Indira Gandhi followed were not pro-market as such, they were pro-big businesses. So she basically implemented policies which would have benefited the incumbent big houses of that time, the Birlas and Tatas, by basically reducing export duty specific to the products that these companies dealt in. Another example of how important institutions are is Argentina in 1914. So The Economist came out with an article on it recently. Can you guess when Harrods in London had to open a store abroad for the first time, which place it chose?
Buenos Aires.
Yeah, Buenos Aires. It was not the US, it was not any other European country, it was Buenos Aires, because that was supposed to be a country of the future. But institutions are that important that in the 100 years since then, Argentina is now poorer than both Peru and Brazil, countries that used to look down upon 100 years ago. So I suppose that the concluding hypothesis is this: that capitalism and the concept of free markets have not really played out in their true spirit. Capitalism is still an extremely feudal system which benefits the money class, the politically powerful class, the huge industrialists, the high net worth individuals at the top, at the expense of, again, the working class, the laborers. Now, of course, the definitions of both of them have expanded. The working class now is not just the peasants who basically till the land for their feudal lords, but more or less the structure of society is still the same. Inequality has risen very sharply over the past century, ever since the Industrial Revolution, and yeah, so